So I'm 10 episodes into this new show we call the 5-Minute Murder Show. And I want to take a moment to recognize that it's taking legs of its own, and I'm finding my stride with this show and finding what I want it to be. And what I find myself continually doing is covering these cases that were recently solved, that are kind of your average run-of-the-mill murders that technology has helped to solve many, oftentimes 20 plus years later. There were cases that were cold. And this is something that we don't really do on True Crime Guys. We cover cases that have been around, that there's a ton of information for, that we can really, provide a ton of info on and tell a full story. There's limited info, but they're still compelling nonetheless. I think that's why we all enjoy shows like Cold Case Files, First 48, is just anytime someone takes another person's life, it's interesting. And this is a chance to tell these stories that are not getting a lot of coverage, and they're new. They just got solved. So this is another case along those lines. So in March 1990, 71-year-old John Burkhart from Fontana, California, was supposed to go to breakfast with a friend, and he didn't show up. I imagine John was retired, and this was, a common weekly breakfast. And so his friend was quite confused when his friend didn't show up. And he's 71, so, there's always a possibility that he passed away from natural causes. So his friend goes to the home on Mango Avenue, and would find that he very much did not die from natural causes. He had been stabbed to death, and his home had been ransacked. Clearly, robbery was a motivator in this case. And 1990, so during the initial investigation, police collected fingerprints and other evidence, but they were unable to positively identify a suspect. They didn't have the advanced software to run this fingerprint through a system of potential suspects. But they did hold on to those fingerprints and the evidence. They had the murder weapon as well, the steak knife. But nonetheless, the case would go cold and would stay cold for over 30 years. They did get a break, though. In 2003, 13 years after the murder, a woman came forward who will remain unidentified, and she was a witness to this. She was actually at the home on the day of the murder. She claimed that on March 25th, 1990, she and a man named Michael Joseph Vance went to John Burkhart's home to pick up some money. Apparently, Burkhart owed Vance some money, according to Vance. And when Burkhart invited Vance and this woman into the home, an argument broke out over the money that was owed to Vance. During the argument, Vance went to Burkhart's kitchen, grabbed a steak knife, and repeatedly stabbed the old man. Vance and the unnamed witness then ransacked John Burkhart's home and take several items before they left. Over the years, you have to think this must have eaten at this woman's conscience, witnessing such a gruesome murder. But she was also, I'm sure, afraid for her own safety to turn it. Who knows what this Vance had said to her? I'm sure he threatened her. If you ever say anything about what you saw, I'll kill you too. You have to think that was part of this, because she finally comes forward, and I believe it's because Vance ends up in prison for something else. So she must have felt safe enough to then come forward. But over the years, technology advanced, and investigators were finally also able to match up the fingerprints now to a suspect that had been named. And so they have, a witness whose solid story that backs up the evidence they found at the crime scene. And they also have, incontrovertible evidence as far as the fingerprints that they were able to match up from the crime scene to this suspect that has been fingered by this woman. Vance, of course, denied knowing Burkhart, denied being at the scene, but that just strengthens the case. When you deny being at the scene, then how are your fingerprints there? We know you were there. So he would end up pleading guilty to a voluntary manslaughter charge. As I mentioned, he was already in prison for an unrelated crime, and will serve his prison time concurrently with his remaining time. According to prison records, Vance, who's now 56, is serving his term in Valley State Prison in Chowchilla, California. And he'll be eligible for parole in February of 2033. And by then, he'll be probably close to 70 years old. And this crime occurred in 1990. Bob Burkhart, the victim's son, so the son of the old man who passed away, says, "We are very grateful that this case has been solved after 32 years. This story should be focused on the pursuit of justice and the need to continue to work to bring closure to families affected by the loss of the loved ones in cases that may seem to be forgotten." So true. That's also why I like to cover this. These cases, they have been lost over the course of time. And really, when you look into these cases, it's a lot of just the same like paragraph that has been repeated through different articles and whatnot. No life has been brought to it. 71-year-old man killed in 1990. Murder's been solved finally after 30 years. But yeah, there's still people alive, like the son of this man who this matters to, Bob Burkhart. And I wanted to add that quote in for that reason. But this is my case this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There will be more just like this as cases continue to get solved. Every week we see more and more pop up. If you have any suggestions as well that you would like to bring to my attention, I will look into those and maybe cover them in a future episode. So thanks for listening and watching, and I'll see you next week.
You hush your mouth, boy.